I want to bring a little thing to attention. Now, this isn't really necessarily considered recent news, but for those of us that have been keeping tabs on the IDW Sonic situation, they have pretty much come forward and said the Freedom Fighters will not be in the comic this year. So it's a simple case of the door is not closed to them, because I think even IDW recognize the popularity of characters like Bunny Rabo, Sally Acorn, Rotor, or Boomer, as he was known as in the earlier run of the comic. They're pretty much just focusing on the first year of the comic, just working with the core characters that they've got to work with. And I have noticed with the way Ian Flynn is writing this comic, it is pretty much another incarnation, but he's not having to deal with the politics of, oh, you can't have my characters in there because I have copyright, blah, 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 blah. Basically, as it says, unfortunately, the topic of the Freedom Fighters was never brought up at the panel, despite a word from Ian Flynn telling us they would. We pushed for an explanation post-panel, and a pair of tweets below explains the answers we got from Ian Flynn and Joe Hughes, who is the head editor. Tell us after a quick Q&A of Ian Flynn after the panel that an official explanation of the Freedom Fighters was prepared, that Joe Hughes has the explanation. We are trying to get the explanation in the waning hours of WonderCon. The Freedom Fighters will not appear in 2018. The door is not closed. The IDW is focusing on core characters for now. Long story short, for now, no. But it's definitely not out of the question that they might appear later on. And it's very possible that they can, once the main Sonic cast has gotten their time in the spotlight. There are no legal problems mentioned, just IDW's current plans for the time being as they get the comic underway. It's also worth noting that Ian Flynn is a fan of the Freedom Fighters. So, and also he actually mentioned when asked about this on Twitter, he just replied, hashtag all knowingly smile. So he knows something. Mm-hmm. I look at this as it's bad news, good news. You don't get what you want straight away, but you know the possibility exists that we could get the characters that we so badly want to see brought in. But I understand IDW's point of view that they actually want to get this comic book to stand on its own merits. And I've actually read through the first 3 issues. It's actually a decent comic. You know, they just want to be able to tell a good story, which seems to be carrying on from the events of Sonic Forces. Now, here's the thing. They've said, Sandy Acorn is not canon to this. Here's the thing. The online Sonic Forces comic, which was actually written by Ian Flynn, there are pictures in Rouge's office of Sally on the wall, saying, like, have you seen this person? Sega have confirmed this is canon. So Sally Acorn and the rest of the Freedom Fighters are considered canon in the game universe because that comic is a prequel to Sonic Forces. So therefore, anybody listening who says, oh, she's not an official character, it's like, she kind of is if Sega gave the okay for it. So it's going to be one of those situations. Let's just see what they do for 2018. Let's see what happens when they go into 2019. And just to answer one particular question, how would you see the IDW crew introducing the Freedom Fighters in a new comic continuity? Not being a comic book writer, but according to quite a few people, I'm a very talented writer. I don't personally see it that way, but hey, keep yourself humble. That way they can't grumble. I would actually introduce them one by one, slowly. And here's how I would do this. First and foremost, you would introduce, say, someone like Bunny Rabo from the Shadows, assisting Tails, Knuckles, Amy, whichever your preference. And each week, you get a closer reveal. If I could give you a decent comparison, think of the Incredible Hulk 2008. You see him as a shadow creature, and when I say that, he's more of a silhouette. You don't really get the full reveal until like the second act, when you get the full reveal at the university. Do that where you might see a shot of Bunny's leg, and then you don't see her again for maybe a couple of issues till you get the full reveal. She introduces herself, and then maybe 2 to 3 weeks pass by. You slowly bring in Rota, then you bring in Antoine, and then you get Sally as established as the leader of the Freedom Fighters. You bring her in last. She ends up joining the Resistance. Whether they'll have her established as the leader again, I don't know, because I don't think they're going to play with the idea of bringing in her as a princess again, because that's Archie's thing. But as established, and here's the thing, I've said this to the point of exhaustion, Sally is not property of Archie. She's Sega's property, because everything that got published in Archie's, Sega had to approve of it, and she is the intellectual property of Sega. Whether Sega of Japan choose to acknowledge this or not, she is actually their property. So that's how I foresee how they'll do things, because it's like anything. You just want to focus. Think of it as what they did with the first Avengers movie in some way. You bring in the core characters, and then you bring in more characters with the sequels, and then by the time you've gotten to Infinity War, you have a smorgasbord of a who's list of characters in there. That is what I would do. Now, Win, I'm going to start with you first on this, seeing as you have as much love for both Satam and the Archies, and obviously, you know, you're as a bigger fan of Sally as I am. How do you feel about these turn of events?
Well, I'm glad that it's not a no, that's for sure. And it'll be interesting to see how everything's approached, and if it goes the way that you're suggesting, even more cool beans. And it kind of makes sense. You introduce the core characters game fans have known from the game first, and then you can introduce the Freedom Fighters gradually as you go. I like it.
And here's another one. You know, you get so many people say, oh, characters like Sally will never be in the main game series. Point to note, for this summer, for Sonic Mania Plus, we are seeing the first appearances of Ray the Flying Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo, respectively, who have not shown up in any Sonic game for the last 20 plus years. If Sega can give the stamp of approval for those two characters to be in, I don't see how the door can be closed on Sally. We'll just have to see what Sega do. And Sega have apparently said no to the possibility of a sequel to Sonic Mania. Here's how this will go. We do not want this. This will give you money. You have my attention. Please go on. Because as well as being able to tell a good story with the game, let's just call it for what it is. Sega, first and foremost, are doing this for profit. And considering they're only just starting to win back their audience, especially with games like Yakuza that my brother plays to the point of, you know, of a religious level. He loves that game. And especially the animation that they do for that game. I don't know if it's motion capture or just really sophisticated programming, computer graphics, but that is some of the best stuff that Sega has done for years. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see how this goes. But, you know, I'm hopeful. To quote the late George Michael, you got to have faith. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Is there anyone that wants to throw their 2 cents in on this? Because I know there are some people here that are not really Satan fans nor Archie's fans, but at the same time, I want to know if if anybody wants to weigh in on this.
I mean, I'm just hoping it goes well for you guys. I mean, I like when things combine, like what is the word? Like for me, I'm really happy with Power Rangers Shattered Grid, especially with every Ranger teaming up against a bigger threat. I mean, that's always my thing. Just like taking things that were in an old medium and bringing it back for the fans. So, like I said, I'm just hoping everything goes well for you guys who loves the series.
All right, I appreciate that, Matt. And yeah,
Bro.
I did hear a few things about Shattered Grid. Ooh, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but
yeah, I read. Yeah.
Yes, I think certain individuals spoiled that for us already.
Oh,
Thank you, Oni.
Yeah.
what did Oni do?
Okay. All right. If you don't remember, way back at a WrestleMania review when I was in my Shin Raiden mode, after I snapped out of it, I think he spoiled something. Oh, it's not something such and such. Like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, technically I didn't know that, but I didn't want to bring Shin Raiden back. But yeah, after that I read, I'm like, and I look back like, God damn it, Oni.
Yeah.
Raiden, just remember this: Oni being Oni.
Basically.
Yep.
Yeah. Kaiju, do you have anything to weigh in on this, or is this not really something that interests you too much?
In terms of the Sonic comics,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as invested with the comic side of the Sonic franchise. It's just that I have had a very limited exposure to the early Archie stuff, and not much else. So that is like an entire world of Sonic that is just like beyond my knowledge. So any of the politics that revolve around certain characters and writers is I'm kind of unaware of, with the exception of what's his name, Cal Pender, simply because that stuff that shit is just way too crazy for me not to get to look into.
We try
Yeah.
not to talk about he who shall not be named because this motherfucker once thought it was a cute idea to kill off Sally Acorn permanently, and Sega of America chewed his ass out for it. Let me just put it this way. If Navi had been born around that time, he would have clawed his eyes out, and then, did things afterwards. Be like, meow, bitch.
Yeah, my cat can be very scary and vindictive.
Oh,
Right
no,
now-
this man would have been...
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was gonna say right
No,
now the
it's like-
masses are safe.
Yeah. Well, let's just say if he and me and this man would have come into the same room, he would have been acquainted with an individual I've lovingly referred to as Majin Lydia. He would have been dead.
This is it's a funny thing. He was actually advertised at a convention for IDW. IDW actually put this picture up of him saying, "Do not do deals with this man," because IDW wanted nothing to do with him, and it got so bad where I've mentioned this once or twice on this show. He went on a rant saying, "Oh, I would have made the IDW comic, absolutely stellar." Somebody responded by saying, "I didn't realize you were a comedian."
Nah. Burn.
I know A-Log in particular as well has never had anything good to say about He Who Shall Not Be Named, because this is the motherfucker who made the comic get rebooted because he said, oh, if I'm not getting credited for my characters that I've copyrighted, then I'm taking elsewhere. It's like, where's your Julie Sue comic? Please, Mr. Who Shall Not Be Named, I'd like to know.
That's right. Didn't he wanted to make an original piece of work with his like created character?
Yeah.
Did he do anything with that?
No. Yeah, just to round this off, like I say, it's good news, it's bad news, good news. So I think we'll table it at that in particular.